joining me. So my name is Dr. Mark Kayem. I'm an ear, nose, and throat specialist, practicing in Beverly Hills, Mammoth Lakes, Las Vegas, and the Cayman Islands. And I'm sure that you, as everybody else, has been overwhelmed with emails and information and news about coronavirus. It's pretty much everything that's in the news right now. You've probably already watched every single show on Netflix because you're stuck at home and know that work, school, businesses, many places have been closed because of this. So the idea of this discussion is just to explain to people what coronavirus is and really to try to eliminate some of the misconceptions and wrong information that's been going out there and that's been leading to some feelings of panic. Now, according to the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, as of today, March 15, 2020, there are 69 cases in all of LA County, and that includes Long Beach and Pasadena. So that's 69 cases for, 15 million people? And so the chance of being exposed to it at this point today still remains very low. We need to remain alert. We need to know how to prevent it. But at this point, the chance that the person next to you in the supermarket has it is still very low. Now, it's important to understand that the situation is very fluid. There's a lot of change going on. In medicine, if we're evaluating a disease and we look at a journal and we find an article from a year ago, that's considered cutting edge. That's up to date and that's new. Well, things have changed. With COVID-19, things are changing from day to day, and information from 48 hours ago may not be accurate anymore. So it really requires a lot of evaluating information from places like the CDC, Public Health, the World Health Organization, and really seeing what is the appropriate way to respond to this threat. So I'm going to start by the name COVID-19. What does it mean? Well, the CO stands for corona, the V for virus, and the ID19 for when it was diagnosed. It was identified in December 2019. So this was, as most of you know, found in China, and it was diagnosed at the end of December 2019, which is just a few months ago. And it has progressed very quickly since then. Now, people are wondering, why is it called corona? It's the appearance on an electron microscope. It's a circle with these little spikes coming out of it that make it look like a crown. Now, most of us now are looking at the computerized 3D version, which shows you the sphere with these little spikes, but looking at it, you need dimensionally, on 2 dimensions, it looks like a little crown. So that's where the corona name came from. And corona is not new. They've been around for years and years. There were decades ago other types of coronaviruses that came out and infected humans and caused a lot of problems. Question is also, where did it come from? Right now, the thought it was probably contained in bat stools from bat caves found in China. And it's thought that this was somehow transmitted to other animals and that people who tried to clean the ground with a water jet aerosolized it, where it went up in the air and it was breathed in, and this is how the humans got it. An important point about the COVID-19 virus is the incubation period. Now, the incubation period is described as the time between when someone is actually exposed to the disease and when they develop symptoms. According to the current research, that time averages about 4 or 5 days. Now, it can be as short as 2 days and as long as 14 days in rare cases, but for most people, the duration of the incubation period, when people carry it but haven't shown any symptoms yet, so don't know they're sick, is about 4 or 5 days. It is usually transmitted either by direct contact or by inhalation of what we call aerosolized virus. Aerosolized virus means that it's been brought up in the air and it's still hanging in the air, but it's important to understand it doesn't survive for very long in the air. It's not considered airborne. Tuberculosis was airborne. Tuberculosis, someone could walk into a room hours after someone else was there and breathe it in and catch it. This is not the same way. If people cough, the little droplets will be in the air for a short period of time, maybe minutes or hours, and so eventually they'll settle down. And so it's unlikely that people will catch it just by breathing it in. Much more likely that they'll catch it from contact, either from their hands to their mouth or their eyes or scratching their nose. And this is where the importance of washing your hands is so important. There's also a question about how long does it survive on its own? Well, in the lab, if coronavirus is applied to a dry surface, say stainless steel, for example, it's felt that it'll last for a few hours, probably 3 hours or around there. However, that is not necessarily the way things are in real life. If the virus is surrounded by mucus or what we would call organic material, it's going to live a lot longer. And as an example, if someone, say, coughs on a shopping cart and there's a piece of mucus with a virus in it, well, that virus might survive for much longer than a few hours. It's also important, for example, the dryness. If it's extremely dry air, it's more likely that it will dry up and kill the virus. If it's very humid, that mucus might stay there longer and the virus will survive longer. So let's take an example. If you're at the supermarket and the person before you is one of those 69 people out of 14 million who has the COVID-19 virus, and they cough on the cart, and you put your hands on it, are you going to get it? No, not yet. If you're careful and you wash your hands as soon as you're done with your shopping, you don't have to worry about it. If you went in with an alcohol wipe and you wipe down the handlebar, you shouldn't have any problems either. But if you're not careful and after grabbing that rail, you scratch your nose or you get an itch in your eyes and you rub your eye, then there's a possibility that you might get it. And this is where the scary exponential growth has occurred. In very tight circles where people are close to each other, it's much easier to catch it. So this is why people are talking about social distancing, trying to keep 5 or 6 feet away from other people. If they cough, if they have the disease and they cough and you're right next to them and you walk into it shortly within, say, minutes afterwards, yes, there's a chance that you might catch it. But again, it's still extremely remote in California. We don't know where it's going to be tomorrow or next week. If it continues to do what it's done in Europe, it could be disastrous. But as of now, people really shouldn't panic because the risk of getting it are still extremely remote. Another question people ask, can pets transmit it? Well, currently it's thought that no, that home pets, domestic animals, very unlikely to either get the disease or even transmit the disease. The next question, well, what are the symptoms? Well, symptoms include coughing, some shortness of breath, and fever. Now, these are the most common ones. Fever being the biggest one. Fever, about almost 90% of people who are infected with the COVID-19 virus will have a fever when they're past the incubation period. Initially, there's no symptoms. That's the incubation period. But after those average 4 or 5 days, that's when people can start getting the symptoms, and fever is one of the most common ones. Actually, it is the most common one, followed by a dry cough in about 2/3 of people, and then fatigue in a little bit over 1/3 of people, sputum production and mucus on coughing in about 33% of people, and shortness of breath about 20%, sore throat about 15%, headaches a little bit under 15%, and then other muscle aches or joint pains about 15%. Chills about 11%, nausea and vomiting about 5% of people, and then nasal blockage 5%, diarrhea about 4%. So it really, fever and dry cough and fatigue are the most common symptoms that people can present with. Now, say you are exposed to the disease, you go through the incubation period, and then you get sick on it. Well, 80% of people will have a mild case of the infection. They will not need to go to see, well, they might go see the doctor, but they won't need to be hospitalized. They might go see the doctor and say, I'm coughing, I've got fever, I have a bad cold. They're infectious, other people could catch it, but 80% will not progress to more severe phase of the disease. Now, about 15% will have what we call moderate to severe disease. They might require hospitalization, they might need oxygen, they may even need to be hospitalized for prolonged periods. So that leaves 5% with the severe disease. Those are the people that need to be in the intensive care units, might need to have a breathing tube down their throat, might need to be on oxygen. And out of that 5%, the mortality rate currently is about 2 or 3%. Now, does that mean that if you get it, will you have a 2% chance of dying? No, no. If you're a healthy young person and you take care of yourself and you don't have any medical problems, the chance of dying is much less than 1%, probably less than 0.1%. On the other hand, if you're 85 years old and have kidney failure and you're on dialysis and you've got other medical problems, diabetes, for example, the mortality rate might be 20% or higher. So everything has to be taken in light of your own health. And obviously, the healthier you are, the less likely it is that you'll fall into that mortality rate. The other thing that's important to know is the average time from the onset of symptoms. So after the incubation period, you start getting symptoms. Well, how long does it take to recover? Well, for the 80% that will have mild cases, it's approximately 2 weeks. For those patients who are more severe or critical, it could be 3 to 6 weeks. But usually within 2 weeks to 6 weeks, people will get over it. And for the 2 or 3% that have critical conditions, then during that time that they could actually succumb to the disease. And that's obviously where the fear is coming from. Now, if someone has been diagnosed with COVID-19 and they've had their 2 or 3 days of symptoms and then they clear up, well, to be considered cleared of the problem, we'll say either 14 days after the onset of symptoms or 3 days after the resolution of your symptoms, whichever one is longer. That's when we consider it to be cleared. And so, as I was mentioning, there's a lot of changes that are happening. Yesterday, France came out to say that they've had 4 patients that were young people and that they all developed severe disease, which is rare. Usually young people are healthy, they don't get into severe disease. And all 4 of them had taken an anti-inflammatory like Aleve or Advil. And so they've made a recommendation, which at this point is being accepted by the world until we can prove otherwise, that if you have any concerns, don't take anti-inflammatories. Take Tylenol, but using anti-inflammatories like Aleve or Motrin or Advil could make things worse if someone does get exposed to the disease. So in conclusion, should we be worried? Well, worrying doesn't help. It's just going to create a panic. This is not World War Z. It's not I Am Legend movie. There's a threat there, but we need to understand the problem. And once we understand the problem, then it's easier to react rationally and not go out and buy thousands of rolls of toilet paper and bottled water without really knowing why, but because the guy next door did. Then we know that this is a threat. It's a threat that we're going to deal with. It's a threat that should completely delineate itself over the next few weeks to few months. It's not something that's going to last for years, but we just need to be careful. And the social distancing that we've been doing will definitely reduce the chance of the spread becoming exponential the way it has in Europe. And over the next few weeks, we'll know a lot better whether or not the threat has resolved. So I will now take any questions if anybody has any questions to ask.
Thank you, Dr. Kayem. We have a question coming in from the audience. Is there anything we can do preventatively to prevent this virus from getting in, like vitamins, minerals, herbs, things of that nature?
If there are any vitamins that can help, it's unproven. Now, a lot of people believe highly in vitamins or supplements like turmeric and garlic, and they may be helpful, but for the average person, if you're healthy, if you don't have chronic medical conditions, I would just get good sleep, drink a lot of water, and just do the things that we know can make a difference to keeping the body healthy. And of course, if you're going to go in an area, if you need to go to the grocery store, then yes, it's a good idea to bring some alcohol wipes and just wipe down the handlebar on the cart or anything else that you might come in contact with. Masks are not necessary. And this is important to understand. You don't need to wear a mask. Wearing a mask, if someone's coughing in your eye, you're still going to get the disease. And so you don't need to wear a mask, but if you are sick, if you have the flu and you're not sure this is the disease, then yes, then you should definitely wear a mask. But then again, you shouldn't be going out to the store anyways. You should stay at home until your symptoms clear up to make sure that if in the unlikely case that you do develop the disease, that you don't spread it to other people.
Okay, great, thank you. And we have another question that just came in. How long is this pandemic going to take? Are we looking at weeks, months?
There's an interesting curve looking at a pandemic where how many cases you get, it keeps going up and at some point it peaks and it starts coming down. Well, without social distancing, it's felt that it's going to go very high with a lot of deaths and it's going to come down quickly. With social distancing, they feel that what's going to happen is the curve is going to be a lot flatter. So fewer deaths, but much longer to actually have the issue resolved. So I would say probably within 1 or 2 months is when the fear, the need for isolation, for closing schools and work and all these things, I think over the next month or two is when things are going to start settling down and we'll be able to get back to our normal routines.
Excellent, thank you. And where can people contact you?
Probably email is a good way, or my website. My email is mark, M-A-R-C, at drkayem.com, drkayem.com. And my website is www.drkayem.com.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I will
Right.
pass you back to Erin. Have a good night and stay safe.
Beautiful.